I, 28F, have been grappling with a complex family situation that has left me questioning everything I thought I knew about my relationships and my place in the world. Growing up, I always felt like the odd one out in my family. My parents, especially my mom, seemed to favor my older sister Lauren, 30F, in every way imaginable. This wasn't just a case of slight preference, it was blatant favoritism that colored every aspect of our childhood and beyond. From as early as I can remember, Lauren was the golden child. She was naturally intelligent, excelled in school without much effort, and had a talent for music that our parents nurtured relentlessly. I, on the other hand, struggled academically and never found that one thing I was exceptionally good at. It wasn't for lack of trying. I worked hard in school and tried various extracurriculars, but nothing seemed to click. Our childhood was filled with countless instances of unequal treatment. When Lauren got straight A's, which was almost every report card, she'd be rewarded with lavish gifts. One time, our parents surprised her with a trip to Disney World just for maintaining her perfect GPA. When I managed to scrape by with B's and C's after hours of studying and tutoring, I'd be lucky to get a pat on the back from my dad and a distracted good job from my mom. The disparity in how we were treated extended to every aspect of our lives. For Lauren's 16th birthday, our parents threw her a massive party and bought her a brand new car, a sleek red convertible that was the envy of her entire high school. For my 16th, I got a small family dinner and an envelope with some cash. I tried not to be bitter, but it was hard not to feel the sting of being constantly overshadowed. As we got older, the divide only seemed to grow. Lauren breezed through high school as the valedictorian and got accepted to an Ivy League college. Our parents were over the moon, bragging about her accomplishments to anyone who would listen. They paid for her entire education, tuition, room and board, even a generous monthly allowance for expenses. I, on the other hand, opted for community college. It wasn't entirely by choice. My grades weren't good enough for a 4-year university, and our parents made it clear they wouldn't be footing the bill for my education anyway. I worked part-time at a local diner to pay my own way through school. It was exhausting juggling work and classes, but I was determined to make something of myself. During this time, I met Matthew, 29M. He was a customer at the diner, and we hit it off immediately. Matthew came from a working-class background and was putting himself through college too. He understood my struggles in a way no one else ever had. We started dating, and for the first time, I felt truly seen and appreciated for who I was. Meanwhile, Lauren's life seemed to be going perfectly. She graduated with honors, landed a high-paying job at a prestigious firm, and met Josh, 31M, a successful lawyer from a well-to-do family. Our parents were thrilled, of course. They saw Josh as the perfect addition to the family and welcomed him with open arms. The final straw in our family dynamic came when Lauren got engaged a few years ago. Our parents threw her an extravagant engagement party at an upscale country club. They invited what felt like half the town, sparing no expense on catering, decorations, and entertainment. During the party, they proudly announced that they would be paying for Lauren and Josh's entire wedding, easily $50,000 plus a fare. I tried to be happy for my sister, but it was hard not to feel the familiar pang of jealousy and hurt. Matthew and I had been together for years at this point, and while we talked about marriage, we knew we couldn't afford anything elaborate. We were still paying off our student loans and saving for a down payment on a modest house. When Matthew and I got engaged last year, my parents' response was lukewarm at best. There was no engagement party, no big announcement. They reluctantly agreed to contribute $5,000 to our wedding plans, but made it clear that was all they could afford to give. I knew it was a lie. They had just bought a new vacation home in Florida, but I was beyond arguing at that point. I was hurt but not surprised. At that point, I had largely accepted that I would never be the favorite child. Matthew was outraged on my behalf and encouraged me to confront my parents about their blatant favoritism. But I decided it wasn't worth the drama and emotional toll. We ended up having a small backyard wedding that was lovely, even without my family's support. Lauren attended with Josh, but left early, claiming she had an important work event the next day. Since then, I've kept my distance from my parents and Lauren. We see each other at major holidays, but that's about it. I focused on building my own life and family with Matthew. We both have steady jobs, we bought a small fixer-upper house, and we're happy. But I'd be lying if I said the years of rejection and unequal treatment didn't still sting. Last month, I got some unexpected news that's thrown everything into chaos. My grandmother on my dad's side passed away. We were never particularly close, as she lived across the country and we only saw her every few years. What shocked me was finding out that she left me a substantial inheritance, $500,000 to be exact. Apparently, my grandmother had been following both my and Lauren's lives from afar. She saw how our parents treated us differently and decided to try to even things out a bit in her will. Lauren was left a small sum of $50,000, while the bulk of the estate came to me. I was floored. For the first time in my life, I felt like someone in my family saw me and wanted to help. The money would be life-changing for Matthew and me. We could pay off our modest house, set aside money for our future kids' education, and have a solid nest egg. It felt like a chance to finally have the security and opportunities that had always been given to Lauren. The problem is, my family is furious. My parents called me in a rage, saying I needed to split the money 50-50 with Lauren. They claim it's only fair and what my grandmother would have wanted. They said that Lauren deserves it more because she has a more expensive lifestyle to maintain and that I should be used to living with less anyway. The irony of their statement seemed completely lost on them. Lauren has been blowing up my phone, alternating between guilt trips and threats of legal action if I don't share. She's saying things like, "After everything I've done for you growing up, this is how you repay me? And you know I've always looked out for you, how can you be so selfish?" It's hard for me to reconcile these statements with my memories of growing up constantly in her shadow. I'm torn. On one hand, I feel like this inheritance was meant for me specifically. My grandmother clearly had her reasons for the uneven split. And after a lifetime of getting the short end of the stick, is it so wrong to want to keep this for myself? This feels like my one chance to have something that's just for me, to build a life I've always dreamed of but never thought I could have. On the other hand, $500,000 is a lot of money. I know Lauren and Josh have been struggling financially lately, despite their high-paying jobs. They bought a big house and live an expensive lifestyle, and I've overheard my parents talking about how they've had to help them out a few times. Part of me wonders if I'm being selfish by not sharing at least some of it. Am I stooping to their level by keeping it all? I've talked it over endlessly with Matthew. He thinks I should keep every penny and tell my family to kick rocks. He says they've never considered my feelings or financial situation, so why should I consider theirs now? My best friend thinks I should give Lauren $100,000 to keep the peace, but still keep the majority for myself. I'm paralyzed with indecision. So Reddit, Ida, if I keep the entire inheritance for myself? Should I share some with Lauren? Or split it 50-50 like my parents want? I'm lost and could use some outside perspectives. This inheritance feels like a turning point in my life, and I want to make the right decision. Thanks in advance for any advice. Update 1, it's been about a week since my original post, and to say a lot has happened would be an understatement. First, I want to thank everyone for their comments and advice. Reading through everything really helped me gain some clarity on the situation. After a lot of soul-searching and many long talks with Matthew, I decided to stand my ground and keep the full inheritance. It wasn't an easy choice, but I realize now that I don't owe my family anything after years of unfair treatment. This money was left to me for a reason, and I intend to honor my grandmother's wishes. I spent days drafting and redrafting a message to my family. I wanted to be clear and firm, but not unnecessarily hurtful. Finally, I sent a group text to my parents and Lauren explaining my decision. I tried to be respectful, saying that while I understood their disappointment, this was my inheritance to do with as I pleased. I said I hoped we could move past this and maintain a relationship, but that my decision was final. The response was about what I expected, a complete meltdown. Within minutes, my phone was blowing up with calls and messages. My mom called me selfish and ungrateful, saying I was spitting in the face of everything they'd done for me. My dad said I was tearing the family apart and that he was ashamed to call me his daughter. Lauren sent a long, guilt-trippy message about how she always looked out for me growing up, which is laughable, and how could I do this to her? What I didn't expect was for them to rope in the extended family. Apparently, they've been calling up aunts, uncles, and cousins to tell their, very biased, side of the story. I've been getting judgmental messages from relatives I haven't spoken to in years, people who were never involved in our lives suddenly acting like they had a say. My mom's sister, Aunt Karen, has been particularly vicious. She left me a voicemail calling me a greedy little snake and saying she always knew I would turn out to be a disappointment. This is the same aunt who forgot my name at a family reunion a few years ago, so her opinion doesn't hold much weight with me. The worst part is, they somehow got Matthew's parents involved. I'm still not sure how they got their contact information, but Matthew's mom called me in tears, begging me to reconsider for the sake of family harmony. She said that family is the most important thing and that money isn't worth losing relationships over. It felt like such a betrayal for my family to drag Matthew's parents into this mess. I'd be lying if I said all of this wasn't getting to me. There have been moments where I've considered just splitting the money to make it all go away. The constant barrage of messages and calls is exhausting, and part of me wonders if it's worth the stress. But every time I start to waver, I remember all the years of being treated like a second-class member of my own family. I remember the lonely birthdays, the lack of support for my education, the way they barely acknowledged my wedding. I remember my grandmother's apparent wish to finally level the playing field. And I stand firm in my choice. Matthew has been my rock through all of this. He's furious at my family for their behavior and has been running interference with his own parents. He reminded me of all the times we struggled financially while my parents lavished gifts on Lauren, of all the dreams we put on hold because we couldn't afford them. He says this is our chance to build the life we've always wanted, and we shouldn't let anyone guilt us out of it. We've decided to take a step back from all family interactions for a while to let things cool down. I've muted notifications from my parents and Lauren, and we're screening our calls. It's hard, especially with the holidays coming up, but it feels necessary for my mental health. In the meantime, we met with a financial advisor to start mapping out how to best use the inheritance. It feels surreal to be having these kinds of conversations. We're looking at paying off our mortgage, which would free up so much of our monthly income. We're also looking at maxing out our retirement accounts and setting up college funds for our future kids. The advisor also suggested setting aside some money for a fun fund, something just for us to enjoy. Matthew and I have never been on a real vacation together, always too worried about money to splurge. The idea that we could actually plan a trip without stressing about every penny is incredible. I know the family drama is far from over. My parents and Lauren seem determined to wear me down, and I'm worried about what they might do next. But for now, I'm trying to focus on the positive changes this inheritance will bring to our lives. For the first time, I feel like I have options, like the future is full of possibilities instead of limitations. I'll update again if anything major happens. Thank you again to everyone for the support and advice. It means more than you know to feel like someone is finally on my side. Update 2. It's been about a month since my last update, and unfortunately, things have only gotten worse with my family. The constant barrage of guilt-tripping messages and angry phone calls finally pushed me to take more drastic action. After another particularly nasty voicemail from my mother, where she called me ungrateful and said I was dead to her if I didn't share the money, I decided I'd had enough. I've decided to go completely no contact with my parents and Lauren, at least for the foreseeable future. I spent a day drafting an email, trying to find the right words to express my feelings. In the end, I sent them each a final message explaining that their behavior has been toxic and manipulative, and that I need space to heal and move forward with my life. I told them that their constant harassment and attempts to guilt me were damaging my mental health and my marriage. I said that unless they could respect my decisions and treat me with basic decency, I didn't want to hear from them. I then blocked their numbers and removed them from all my social media accounts. It wasn't an easy decision, but it feels like the right one. The constant stress and drama were taking a toll on every aspect of my life. I was having trouble sleeping, my work was suffering, and I found myself snapping at Matthew over little things. He's been incredibly supportive, but I could tell it was wearing on him too. The hardest part has been dealing with the fallout from the extended family. My decision to cut contact seems to have split the family down the middle. Some relatives have reached out to offer support and say they understand my position. My cousin Amy, who I was close to as a kid but drifted apart from as adults, sent me a long email sharing her own experiences with family favoritism. It was comforting to know I wasn't alone in feeling this way. Others have doubled down on the guilt trips and accusations. My dad's brother, Uncle Steve, left me a rambling voicemail about how I was destroying the family and would regret this when I was older and alone. It stung to hear, but I reminded myself that this is the same uncle who forgot my birthday for 3 years in a row while never missing Lauren's. I've had to block a few particularly persistent aunts and cousins who wouldn't stop harassing me. It's painful to feel like I'm losing so much of my family over this, but I keep reminding myself that true family wouldn't treat me this way. They wouldn't try to manipulate and guilt me into giving up something that was left to me. On a more positive note, Matthew and I have started putting the inheritance to good use. We paid off our mortgage last week, which feels absolutely incredible. After years of stressing over the monthly payments and worrying about what would happen if one of us lost our job, it's like a weight has been lifted off our shoulders. We've also maxed out our IRAs for the year and set up 529 plans for our future children. It's strange to think about having kids when things are so chaotic with my own family, but it also feels hopeful. We're determined to break the cycle and create a loving, supportive home for our children, where they'll be valued equally. We're planning a vacation later this year, our first real, non-budget trip as a couple. We're thinking about going to Europe, something we've always dreamed of but never thought we'd be able to afford. It feels strange to be making these big financial moves and planning for the future while dealing with so much family drama. But I'm trying to focus on building the life and family I've always wanted with Matthew. I'm still processing a lot of complicated emotions about everything that's happened. There are days when I feel strong and certain in my decisions, and others when I'm racked with guilt and doubt. I've started journaling to help sort through my feelings, and I'm considering finding a therapist to talk to. But overall, I feel more at peace with my decision than ever. I'm hopeful that with time and distance, I'll be able to heal from the years of unequal treatment and build a life filled with love and mutual respect. I'll update again if there are any major developments. Thanks again to everyone who's offered support and advice throughout this ordeal. Update 3. It's been about 3 months since I last posted, and I wanted to give a final update on the situation. A lot has changed, and not all of it for the better. The good news is that Matthew and I are doing well. We've settled into our newly mortgage-free life and are enjoying the security that comes with it. Update 3. Continued. It's amazing how much less stress we feel now that we're not constantly worrying about making ends meet. We took that vacation we planned, 2 weeks in Europe, and it was incredible. We visited Paris, Rome, and Barcelona, staying in nice hotels and enjoying good food without constantly checking our bank account. For the first time in my life, I felt truly free to enjoy myself without constant financial stress. We've also started talking more seriously about starting a family. With the inheritance, we're in a much better position to support children than we ever thought we'd be. We've been looking into local school districts and even started a Pinterest board for nursery ideas. It's exciting and a little scary to think about becoming parents, especially given my complicated family history. But I'm determined to create a loving, supportive home for our future children. Now for the not-so-good news. Despite my attempts to go no contact, my family has not let up. They've started showing up at our house unannounced, leaving guilt-tripping voicemails from unknown numbers, and even contacting my workplace. Last week, my boss pulled me aside to ask if everything was okay at home because my mother had called the office in tears, saying she urgently needed to speak with me. The last straw came when my mother somehow got a hold of my best friend's number and called her in tears, begging her to talk some sense into me. She told my friend all sorts of exaggerated stories about how I was destroying the family and how Lauren was suffering because of my selfishness. My friend was uncomfortable and upset, and I felt terrible that my family drama had spilled over into my friendships. After consulting with Matthew and doing some research, we decided to take legal action. We've hired a lawyer and are in the process of filing for a restraining order against my parents and Lauren. It's drastic, I know, but we feel it's necessary for our peace of mind and safety. The lawyer has advised us to document all instances of harassment and unwanted contact, which we've been doing meticulously. I never imagined my relationship with my family would come to this. There's a part of me that's grieving for the loving family I never really had. I find myself thinking about happy memories from childhood, family vacations, holiday dinners, and wondering if they were as idyllic as I remember or if I'm just romanticizing the past. But a bigger part of me feels relief at finally setting firm boundaries and prioritizing my own well-being. I've started sleeping better at night, and the constant knot of anxiety in my stomach has begun to loosen. Matthew says he's noticed a positive change in my mood and overall outlook. Through all of this, I've realized that family isn't just about blood. It's about love, respect, and support. Matthew has been my true family throughout this ordeal. And we're building a chosen family of friends who lift us up instead of tearing us down. We've been hosting more dinner parties and game nights, surrounding ourselves with positive people who value us for who we are. As for the inheritance, we're continuing to use it to build the life we've always dreamed of. But more importantly, we're using it as a reminder to break the cycle of favoritism and unequal treatment. If we do have children, we're committed to loving and supporting them equally, celebrating their individual strengths and helping them through their struggles. Thank you to everyone who's followed along and offered support. Your kind words and advice have meant more than you know. Here's to moving forward and creating a brighter future, inheritance or not.